What's going on, everybody? My name is Drew and I like to draw cartoons. And welcome to part 1 of 2024 in review. For this video, I'm going to be looking back at this year so far and talking about some of my favorite movies, some of my favorite TV shows, and some of my favorite art that I made over this year so far. This year has been full of a lot of awesome movies, awesome TV shows, and a lot of inspiration for me to make some really cool stuff this year. I'm so excited to look back and dive in and talk about some of the stuff I got to make this year and talk about some of my favorite things I got to watch this year. Now, I did say this is a part 1 because I want to divide this video into 2 parts where I talk about the first 6 months of the year in part 1 and the 6 months after in part 2. Because I'm filming part 1 in November. Obviously, we still have some time to go in 2024, so I can't talk about the entire year yet. But I did want to talk about some of this year and some of the awesome stuff that I got to make and some of the great things I got to watch. So basically how this is going to work is I'm going to be going month by month, talking about the things that I got to watch and the things that I got to make over the course of this year. And when I talk about a certain movie, especially when it's a movie that released this year, I'm going to be talking about it in the month that I saw it. Not necessarily the month that it released in theaters, but the month that I got to watch it. So you're going to see some movies that are later on in the years because they had to wait for it to hit streaming, but you're also going to see some films that I talk about in the month that they did come out. Once again, there is a lot of stuff that I want to cover, so let's just dive right in. But before we do, as always, please make sure to like and subscribe. Follow me on Instagram, follow me on TikTok, and follow me on Letterboxd as well. If you follow me on Letterboxd, you can look back at all the stuff that I've reviewed this year and all the different movies that I got to watch over the course of this incredibly stacked year for movies and television. Now, like I said, there is a lot I got to cover today, so I do kind of have a little bit of a cheat sheet, a little bit of like a script to go along for this. So let's just start out in January of 2024. So let's talk about some movies that I got to watch in January 2024. One movie that I did get to watch that released in late 2023, The Iron Claw. I've talked about this film a little bit. That film is so good. The emotion in it is incredible. And I have mentioned this again as well. It's on the short list of films that has made me cry. It's a short list of The Iron Claw, Marley and Me, and another film that came out this year that I'll talk about in a little bit. But Zac Efron was incredible in this film. Absolutely loved The Iron Claw. And I did get to see a few other films that released in theaters in January 2024. One of those being Mean Girls. Mean Girls was actually a really big surprise for me. I actually really enjoyed it. I was even listening to the soundtrack a little bit in my car in the months to follow, so I really enjoyed Mean Girls. And another film that I got to see in theaters in January 2024 was ISS, which if you're not familiar with that film, the overall concept is there's these American and Russian astronauts all on this International Space Station together, and then war breaks out on Earth, and then they need to like kind of figure out who's going to take control of the ISS. Great concept. Horribly executed. It's really just like the biggest disappointment for me of any film that was released this year. My gosh, I just really could have been so much better. It's even got Ariana DeBose. I love Ariana DeBose. I just feel like it could have been so much better, but they really dropped the ball with that film. And in January of this year, there were a few awesome, iconic movies that I got to watch for the first time. One of those being Back to the Future. One of the greatest films of all time, and it absolutely blew me away. I love Back to the Future now. Back to the Future is now one of my favorite films of all time, and I got to watch the rest of the trilogy throughout the rest of this year too. The subsequent movies that fall aren't nearly as good or capture the magic that I think that the first one had, but my God, is the first one just so much fun. Absolutely love Back to the Future. And in preparation for Dune Part 2, I watched Dune Part 1 for the first time in January of this year, and on my first watch, I was not impressed. I definitely didn't understand it at the time. I remember finishing it and reviewing it on Letterboxd, and I gave it like a 3-star, and I really didn't like it. I did watch it again before going to see Dune Part 2 and liked it significantly better, but I do remember my first time watching Dune and just not really being that impressed. And man, was I wrong. And there's only one little mini series that I want to talk about that I started in January that was actually really fun, and this was drawing MCU characters as Bluey characters. I even made a video earlier this year where I talked about them and the process of turning someone into a Bluey character. So that was a lot of fun. Definitely go check out that video too. But in that series, I took a lot of different characters and turned them into Bluey characters. And some of them included Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, Hulk and Bruce Banner kind of all in one piece together, Black Panther, Thanos, the Black Widow, Hawkeye. I did all 3 Spider-Man doing the pointing meme too, which actually you can buy on a t-shirt in my shop right now. And then I also did Wanda and Vision, both in their Halloween costumes from WandaVision. This was such a fun series to do and really was the highlight of my art in January of this year. That's going to do it for January, so let's move on into February. And February had 2 of my favorite shows of the year, both coming out around the same time, and they could not have been more different in what kind of show they were. One of them was like the Monarch Monsterverse show. I really liked the story and the characters, having Kurt Russell and his son playing the same character. I thought that was really cool. I really loved that show. And then the show Ted, based off the whole Seth MacFarlane talking bear character, but it takes place in the 80s. My God, I love that show too. I love Seth MacFarlane. I love his kind of comedy. So I absolutely love that show. And because I loved both of those shows and they're coming out at the same time, kind of battling for my attention, I came up with this crazy concept of drawing this one iconic shot of Godzilla and King Kong from Godzilla vs. Kong, where they're fighting on that giant military ship on the water. And I replaced Kong with Ted. And you'll see right here, I drew Godzilla versus Ted. And then also, like I said, I love the Ted show. So I also wanted to draw Ted in some different cartoon styles. And those cartoon styles included Winnie the Pooh, the Care Bears, obviously had to do Family Guy because they're both made from Seth MacFarlane. And then I did We Bare Bears, Powerpuff Girls, and Five Nights at Freddy's. If any of you were following me like later 2023, I did a lot of Five Nights at Freddy's art as well. So it was fun to try to imagine Ted as a Five Nights at Freddy's animatronic. Some other artwork that I did in February was drawing Danny Phantom in some different cartoon styles because Danny Phantom celebrated his 20th anniversary this year. In February 2004 was when we got introduced to the iconic character of Danny Phantom. So I really want to do some drawings of Danny Phantom to celebrate that. And some of those included Loud House, The Simpsons, Bluey, obviously gotta do some Bluey. Disney, I actually did Disney because the voice actor for Danny Phantom, David Kaufman, saw one of my posts and suggested to do Disney, so obviously I had to do a Disney one. And then I also did a Rick and Morty one. So that little mini series was a ton of fun to celebrate the iconic character. And the next drawing I'm going to talk about that I did in February is one of my favorites that I did this year. If you've been following along with the marketing for the new Fantastic Four movie that's coming out next year, man, you've been seeing some awesome stuff. They really got this look and feel all looking so good for the marketing for this film. I'm so excited for this film. And on Valentine's Day, they released our first look at the Fantastic Four cast in this very creative Valentine's Day poster for the Fantastic Four. I absolutely loved it. Really want to try to translate it and draw it in my own way into some kind of cartoon style. And I chose The Simpsons. I really want to try to translate one of the iconic families from Marvel into the style of The Simpsons. And you'll see right here the finished product. The Fantastic Four poster from Valentine's Day that they released in February of this year in the style of The Simpsons. Absolutely love this one. One of my favorite things I made this year. There weren't really a lot of movies I want to talk about that I saw in February, but one that I did see in theaters is the film Argylle. Now, I absolutely love the marketing for this film, and I was absolutely hooked. I really wanted to go see it. And the film isn't great, but I had a damn good time. It's really fun. A lot of crazy action, a lot of very visually pleasing moments, a lot of bright colors. Even Henry Cavill's high top fade I thought was hilarious. And I also just really love the way that the figures looked and like the art for the book in that universe of the movie. So it was just overall, I thought it was a lot of fun. And another show that came out in February was the live action Avatar show. Now, bear with me. I have not watched any Avatar stuff, unfortunately. I can fully understand how good it is, how much people love the show and this whole universe. So I really wanted to draw some Atla characters to celebrate this new show coming out. So I took some of the more iconic characters and I drew them in the same 6 cartoon styles. These cartoon styles included Loud House, Fairly OddParents. I chose those two because they are both cartoons from Nickelodeon. Then I also did ones like Bluey, Powerpuff Girls, Peanuts or Charlie Brown, and South Park. I did those 6 styles all for these 5 characters. I did it for Aang, I did it for Zuko, I did it for Katara, I did it for Sokka, and I did it for Toph. Those were all so much fun to make. And then along with those iconic characters in those 6 cartoon styles, I also took another iconic character, Uncle Iroh, and drew him in 6 other cartoon styles. And those styles included Handsome Squidward, which isn't really a style, but it's something I love doing. And then I also did The Simpsons, Family Guy, South Park, Fairly OddParents, and Rick and Morty. Now let's move on to March. Now March was a really, really big month for movies and for my artwork because March was the month where Dune Part 2 was released, which is still at this moment the best film of the year in my opinion. It's just absolutely incredible. It's an absolute masterpiece. One of the best action, sci-fi, whatever genre you want to put it in, it's one of the best ever. And it spawned some awesome artwork that I got to make this year. Now obviously I had to draw Paul Atreides in something. I took Paul Atreides and drew him in 6 different cartoon styles, and those cartoon styles included Bluey, Family Guy, South Park, Handsome Squidward, again, not really a style, but more of a template, Loud House, and Powerpuff Girls. And in those, I obviously want to make sure his eyes were blue, the iconic Fremen blue eyes from Dune. So there's Paul Atreides in 6 cartoon styles. And I think my favorite character from Dune Part 2 was Austin Butler as Fade Rotha Harkonnen. My God, he was one of my favorite villains of the year. His portrayal was absolutely insane. I just wish he would have gotten some more screen time. Probably would have been my favorite villain performance of the year. And in my drawings, I wanted to draw them in black and white because of the iconic black sun scene, like in that Coliseum. It's one of my favorite scenes maybe ever. Absolutely love that. I just did 4 cartoon styles for Fade, and those cartoon styles were Rick and Morty, South Park, The Simpsons, and again, a handsome Squidward. Can't do an Austin Butler character without trying to do the iconic handsome Squidward template. And the last character from Dune Part 2 that I did draw was Stilgar. Stilgar wasn't one of the more prominent characters, but he did spawn the greatest meme from Dune Part 2, the Lisan al-Gaib meme. So I really wanted to try to translate that into some cartoon style drawings. And I figured the best way to do it was to work off of the Paul Atreides drawings. So each drawing I did of Stilgar was basically him reacting to Paul Atreides in that style as well. So Stilgar saying Lisan al-Gaib in the style of, once again, Bluey, South Park, Family Guy. And then instead of doing Handsome Squidward, I drew him as Mr. Krabs. So it's still the SpongeBob universe. And then Loud House and Powerpuff Girls. Absolutely love doing that one. Such a great meme. Dune Part 2, still my favorite film of the year. Another film that released in March of 2024 was Kung Fu Panda 4. Now, even though it's definitely my least favorite of the franchise so far, it just didn't hit the way that the other ones do. The first one's still my favorite, but 2 and 3 are also really, really good. But the fourth one just didn't hit as well for me. But even though I didn't like it that much, I still drew Poe in 4 cartoon styles, and those cartoon styles included Family Guy. I made him into a Five Nights at Freddy's animatronic as well. Then I did We Bare Bears and the Bluey style as well. Now, another thing that came out of Kung Fu Panda 4 was this incredible banger of a cover of Hit Me Baby One More Time that was performed by Jack Black. Now, in the moment, I saw that sound was trending and really wanted to try to capitalize on that, and started drawing Jack Black in different cartoon styles. Then that exploded into me drawing Jack Black in 50 different cartoon styles over the course of this year. If you guys want to see more of those, let me know. I would definitely like to do more. Jack Black is just such a fun character to draw, such a great template to work off of. And here's every single style that I drew Jack Black in from this year. Bluey, South Park, a South Park Canadian, The Simpsons, Family Guy, Gravity Falls, Loud House, Fairly Odd Parents, Big Mouth as a Disney princess, SpongeBob, Hazbin Hotel, Peanuts, Peppa Pig, Powerpuff Girls, Rugrats, Scooby-Doo, Among Us, as an Inside Out Emotion, Regular Show, Angry Birds, Minecraft, Fish Hooks, Garfield, Adventure Time, Smiling Friends, Invincible, Sonic the Hedgehog, Invader Zim, Cuphead, Phineas and Ferb, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Looney Tunes, Ed, Edd n Eddy, Studio Ghibli, As a Smurf, DuckTales, Sesame Street, Aardman, kind of like the Wallace and Gromit claymation style, Avatar: The Last Airbender, a Lego minifigure, Rick and Morty, Handsome Squidward, Danny Phantom, Pokemon, Dragon Ball Z, Total Drama Island, Bob's Burgers, Big City Greens, and Codename Kids Next Door. There is another series that I'll talk about in part 2 that may be also reaching 50 parts here soon. But my God, I've never drawn a character in that many styles. This was so much fun. If you want to see more Jack Black cartoon style drawings, make sure to let me know. Moving along in March some more, another awesome thing that released in March of 2024 was maybe my favorite show of the year, X-Men 97. X-Men 97 was an incredible animated show from Marvel Studios, carrying on the X-Men animated show from the 90s. Holy crap, that show is incredible. Along with some drawings I'll talk about here in a minute, this was one of the first merch designs that I got to make with the awesome guys Alex and Andrew at the Escape Pod. That was so much fun. Working with these guys has been absolute joy, and we'll be talking about some more designs I made over the year. But I also took the iconic characters from X-Men 97 and drew them in different cartoon styles. And those included Cyclops as Handsome Squidward, Storm as a Bluey character, Nightcrawler is a Family Guy character, one of my favorite X-Men right there, Nightcrawler. Wolverine in the South Park style. Gambit in the Simpsons style. If you watch X-Men 97, you know Gambit was one of the big highlights. Rogue as a Powerpuff Girls character. Magneto in the Rick and Morty style. Beast in the Loud House style. Jubilee in the Fairly Odd Parents style. Jean Grey in a Total Drama Island style. Morph as a Lego minifigure. And Professor X in the style of Gravity Falls. Once again, X-Men 97, maybe my favorite show of the year. We talked about a lot of stuff in March and we're still not quite done yet. Another thing that was kind of popular in March this year was the movement to release Coyote versus Acme, which was like a cartoon / live action kind of Looney Tunes movie that was going to feature Coyote taking on Acme. I think it was going to be like some kind of law comedy drama type of deal. And Warner Brothers just shelved it. Looked like it was going to be such a fun movie. So there was a big movement for that. And I wanted to kind of show my support for that by drawing Wile E. Coyote in 4 different cartoon styles. And those styles included Bluey, Powerpuff Girls, Garfield, and South Park. I still would absolutely love to see that film. So Warner Brothers, if you still got it, please release it. We will watch it. And the last thing I'll talk about for March of 2024 was Godzilla x Kong. My God, that film was absolutely insane. I love the MonsterVerse so much. I love everything about the MonsterVerse. And Godzilla x Kong was so much fun. Such a fun addition to this universe that just keeps getting crazier and crazier, wackier and wackier. And we got to see Barbie Godzilla and Thanos Kong. Love that one so much. Also drew King Kong in 4 different cartoon styles. Those included Bluey, Family Guy, Teen Titans, which is basically like Beast Boy turning into King Kong, and South Park. Godzilla x Kong was such a great film. It was in my top 5 films of the year. Early on in the year, obviously things have picked up a lot more since then, but I love this film very much. And we're finally moving on into April, my birth month, and it started out very good because I got to watch the movie Lisa Frankenstein. Now, this film was not for everybody. This film is very wacky, very crazy, and has even some like good horror elements to it. But my God, I love this. I love Catherine Newton. I love Cole Sprouse. I really don't think there's been a Catherine Newton movie that I've seen so far where she's in a big role in it that I haven't liked. And the 80s vibes of this film, the fact that you use like a broken tanning bed as like the Frankenstein type of machine to try to reanimate him. God, I love this film so much. It's such a favorite of mine. And in a previous video where I did like a drawing and ranking my favorite films of the year so far, I did draw Lisa and Cole Sprouse's character as Tim Burton characters because I feel like it has similar like Tim Burton vibes. I feel like these characters fit pretty well, and I think this drawing turned out pretty good. Lisa Frankenstein, one of my favorite films of the year. Another one of my favorite films of the year released in April, and that was Monkey Man, starring and directing Dev Patel. He absolutely knocked it out of the park in this film. Phenomenal performance, phenomenal action sequences. Love Monkey Man so much. Now, this next little mini series that I did in April didn't really have anything to do with a movie or show coming out. It just happens to be one of my favorite YouTube channels, and that is Smosh. I've been a big fan of Smosh for the past few years now, so I really want to try to do something for them because they released a new song that was trending, and I wanted to use that song to draw them in different cartoon styles. And if you're familiar with Smosh, make sure to let me know how you think I did on these drawings, and if you want to see some more Smosh related content from me in the future. And those drawings included Shane as a Family Guy character, Courtney in the style of the Powerpuff Girls, Ian in the South Park style, Damien as a Bluey character. This one seemed to be a fan favorite. Angel in the King of the Hill style, if you know, you know. Anthony in the style of Gravity Falls, Amanda in the Simpsons style, Tommy in the Rick and Morty style, Chance in the Danny Phantom style. He actually saw my video and commented on TikTok. Spencer in the Bob's Burgers style, Arasha in the Total Drama Island style, Olivia in the Loud House style, Noah in the Adventure Time style, Keith in the Phineas and Ferb style, Trevor in the Fairly Odd Parents style, and then a few characters, Sarah Christ in the Scooby-Doo style. I feel like those styles and character work pretty well. And then Chosen as a Big Mouth character. Love Smosh so much, love making these. This was a joy to make. And then the last thing I'll talk about that I did in April 2024 was another one of my favorite drawings of the year, which happens to be me taking a movie poster and translating that into a different cartoon style. And that movie poster happened to be the iconic Deadpool and Wolverine poster that released around this time, showing Wolverine's claws and then Deadpool in the reflection of their claws. Incredible poster, absolute banger poster. Love this poster so much. And because of the popularity of X-Men 97, I wanted to try to take that poster and translate that into the X-Men 97 / X-Men animated series cartoon style. Absolutely loved how this turned out. The X-Men 97 inspired Deadpool and Wolverine poster that I got to make this year. One of my favorite drawings of the year. Moving on from April into May now. We're getting close to the end of part 1 here. And in May had a lot of other good movies that came out, including If, the Imaginary Friends movie directed and created by John Krasinski, starring Ryan Reynolds. Such an absolute joy. For some reason, this one struck a chord with me. One of the only films that made me cry, joining the short list that I mentioned earlier in this video. Love this film so much. Absolute joy to watch. And then in a previous video, again, where I was talking about with Lisa Frankenstein, where I did a video drawing and ranking some of my favorite films of the year so far, I did take Blue from If and translate him into the Foster Home for Imaginary Friends style that you'll see right here. I feel like that's just was like a perfect marriage for those characters, and I think it turned out pretty good. And then another movie that came out in May that I really liked was Boy Kills World. This movie is kind of a mess. Didn't really get a lot of notoriety, but I love Bill Skarsgård, and I love the action and the comedy in this. And I also love how the voice of Bob Belcher was the voice in his head. Just an absolutely wacky movie that I absolutely loved, and I really got to rewatch soon because it was so much fun. It's just John Wick mixed with the Looney Tunes. It's absolutely insane, and I loved it. Now, another film that released released in May 2024 was Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. I absolutely love the original Planet of the Apes trilogy. I love Caesar. That trilogy is one of the best trilogies of all time in all of film. So I was very excited for this film. I can say Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is very good. It's so good. It's got some great performances. There's just some creative choices with the story. I didn't really like too much human stuff. Outside of that, really enjoyed it. Loved the character of Rocka. Would have loved to see more of that. Would have loved to see some more Proximus as well. And during the time that this film was coming out, people were starting to rewatch the Planet of the Apes movies, and people were realizing how good these films were. So people were making a bunch of edits on TikTok, with especially Koba calling Caesar weak, and then Caesar calling Koba weaker. Caesar weak, Koba weaker. That whole scene was making its rounds on the internet, and Caesar and Koba were really becoming very popular on social media. So I saw this as a great excuse to draw those characters in different cartoon styles. And you guys really love those drawings, and I made a bunch of them. Those styles included South Park, Powerpuff Girls, Family Guy, Bluey, Invincible, Peanuts, The Simpsons, Rick and Morty, Loud House, X-Men 97, Peppa Pig, Regular Show, Bob's Burgers, Hanna-Barbera, BoJack Horseman, and Disney. I loved making the Caesar drawings. And then also around the same time was one of my favorite trends of the year on Twitter, where it was, what if Koba was in every movie? And then people were making these edits of putting Koba in these iconic movie moments. And then it sparked an idea in my head to make a drawing that would be like, what if Koba was in every cartoon, and then he was also in that cartoon style in that cartoon? And then in that little mini series that I did, I drew Koba. What if Koba was in the South Park universe? What if Koba was in the Rick and Morty universe? What if Koba was in the Powerpuff Girls universe? Because I figured you could translate the Mojo Jojo cartoon design into Koba. And my favorite one, what if Koba was in Invincible? And I just basically took out Omni-Man and the Think Mark meme and made it into Koba. And then after that, I just drew Koba in some generic cartoon styles, including Bluey, Invincible, Peanuts, Family Guy, Handsome Squidward, Peppa Pig, and Loud House. And with the Peanuts drawings, I was able to take the iconic meme that I mentioned before, Caesar weak, Koba weaker, and then made them both yelling at each other in the style of the Peanuts. Love the Planet of the Apes trilogy. Love Caesar and Koba. Loved making these. May also featured the end of the Bad Batch series. I was never the biggest Bad Batch guy, but I understand that people love it, and I love the Clone Wars design too. It's got some great moments also. Like all of Clone Wars does too. It has a lot of filler. It can lose me at times, but I love the characters, so I wanted to draw them in some different cartoon styles. That included Hunter as a Bluey character, Wrecker as a South Park character, Omega in the Fairly Odd Parents style, Tech in the Simpsons style, Echo in the Handsome Squidward style, and then Crosshair in the Total Drama Island style. I love the Bad Batch. I just love Star Wars. Anything Star Wars, I'm going to watch it and I'm going to love it. Wasn't my favorite, but I still really enjoyed it. And the last thing I'll talk about from May of this year was the Garfield movie. This film was not going to win any awards. The film was fine. The film was fun. It's a perfect family film in my opinion. Chris Pratt did fine. It had some fun moments, specifically like the Top Gun inspired moment with the drones at the end. That was absolutely bonkers, and I was laughing so hard in the theater when I saw that. Also drew Garfield in some different cartoon styles to celebrate the release of this film, and those cartoon styles included Family Guy, Bluey, The Simpsons, South Park, Loud House, Tom and Jerry, Gravity Falls, The Amazing World of Gumball, Cat Dog, Powerpuff Girls, and Phineas and Ferb, basically drawing him as a secret agent from the Phineas and Ferb universe. Now that's the end of May, on to June, the last month we'll talk about in this video. Now June was a really fun month, and June was the month that I got to develop the logo of the shirt, on the shirt that I'm wearing right now, the DuckTakes logo. DuckTakes with Blake and Garrett. I was so happy to be able to be a part of this whole rebrand with them and help them redesign their logo. It was so much fun to work with these guys. If you haven't seen their videos or their podcast, check them out on YouTube and TikTok and all of that. Love those guys, and I'm going to be working with them to make some more merch in the future, so make sure to check them out. Those guys are awesome. But now back to the movies and the drawings of the year. In June, we got to see Inside Out 2, which is now the highest grossing animated film of all time. Insane. I never would have guessed Inside Out 2 would be that film. I thought its representation of anxiety and like panic attacks was still very well done, but it's still just an overall like good Pixar film. Not really one of the best ever, but it's good. So it was still a very good movie. I'm glad I got to go see it in theaters with my wife. Since the Inside Out franchise is like very emotional, and made me think of another emotional Disney property, Bluey. So I wanted to take these emotions from Inside Out and translate them into Bluey characters in the Bluey style. You'll see joy, you'll see sadness, you'll see anger, fear, disgust, and then you'll also see the new ones, anxiety, ennui, embarrassment, and envy. So I'm glad I got to merge these two worlds into one. I loved how they turned out. Now, another film I got to see in June is the film Hitman. Hitman with Glenn Powell was a big surprise for me, and I think it was a big surprise for a lot of people. These Netflix original films can really be a hit or miss sometimes, and this one was a huge hit, no pun intended. Absolutely loved it. And I also love the misdirect of him not actually being a hitman. I went into that film thinking he was going to be a hitman that wears all these different disguises to be a hitman. The fact that it's actually, an undercover operation where he's a fake hitman made it even better. I just love that concept. It's a great film. Love Hitman. If you haven't seen it, go watch it on Netflix. June also saw the release of 2 of my favorite shows of the year, and one of them was The Boys. The latest season of The Boys came out this year, and they just came out with another banger of a season. Maybe not one of their best, because season 3 was so good, but it still was awesome. It had some great moments, including a lot of great Homelander moments, like the moment where he was in that underground bunker, visiting the people who basically tortured him growing up. That whole episode, I think that whole episode should have just been that, and it would have been one of the best episodes in the entire series. Absolutely insane. So I want to draw Homelander in some different cartoon styles. And those styles included Bluey, Invincible, another Prime Video superhero show, South Park, Angry Birds, Rick and Morty, Loud House, Lego, The Simpsons, Smiling Friends, and Family Guy. The Boys never fails to impress, and I love The Boys so much. Can't wait for the next season of Gen V and then the next season of The Boys. Now, another show that came out in the summer of this year was The Acolyte. The Acolyte is a show that I have been very, very public in saying how much I love the show and how much I really think the show deserved a second season. Still very, very upset that we're not getting a second season. Still holding out on potentially getting one. A lot of people didn't like it. I've had a lot of people in my comments telling me that I'm stupid for liking The Acolyte, but I will always love The Acolyte and really, really hope to one day see a season 2. So there you have it. There is part 1 of 2024 in review. From January all the way through June, there's all the movies, all the shows, and some of my favorite artwork that I got to make this year so far. In the coming months, I'll start recording and talking about part 2, where I get to talk about July all the way to December, including all my Deadpool and Wolverine stuff, which I'm still making right now. So I'm very excited to talk about all of that and all the other awesome films that have come out, because almost all the other films in my top 5 and top 10 outside of Dune Part 2 came out after July. Let me know what was some of your favorite stuff you got to see in this video. What was some of my favorite artwork that I got to make this year? What other artwork you want to see from me in the future? It's also Christmas time. What kind of Christmas stuff do you want to see from me coming out this year? Stay tuned for Part 2. It's going to be coming in the next month or so, as I have all the information that I can talk about from July all the way to December. As always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to watch my videos. Also, make sure to check out my merch in my shop. And as always, follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and Letterboxd. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day and keep on drawing.